Charles, just before we dig into a bit of England chat, you've watched the Netflix documentary, which
for my sins,
and you've reviewed it from start
no, that's harsh.
to end.
That's harsh.
I thought you didn't put stars on your review, but can I guess? I would guess that you would have given it 3.
3 probably on a generous day. 2
Oof.
if I was feeling a bit grumpy.
Okay.
It's probably 2.5. I think it's a decent enough first stab. I think the obstacles, while Netflix has not made too much of a big deal and the Six Nations hasn't made too much of a big deal about those obstacles, I think we all know what they were. I think there was a little bit of fear and trepidation among the teams and among the unions at opening their doors fully to these camera crews. But the good news is as you'll read on Telegraph Sport this morning on our website, that the viewing figures last week were excellent. It was the 3rd most watched programme in the UK. It was the number 1 most watched programme in Ireland and 4th in France last week. By all accounts, it took Drive to Survive, the Formula One's equivalent series that Rugby Union is trying to mimic. It took Drive to Survive 2 or 3 series to get to that sort of level. So that, in terms of ratings and viewing figures, that does bode very, very well. We know that the camera crews and the production crews are with the squads now, and they've been with them since the Six Nations launch in Dublin last Monday. They travelled to Spain with England and to Portugal with Ireland. We know that the series has not yet been recommissioned, but those viewing figures and the fact that the camera crews are in camp with the squads, it's a boost for them. And the optimist would say it could and maybe should be reviewed for a second series. I would like to watch a second series because I think that the drawbacks of the first series are quite easily fixed. It's too long. There are 5 rounds and 6 teams. You don't need 8 episodes. Waiting till the 3rd episode to introduce France and Ireland, the 2 best teams in the championship, and with the best player in the championship, and they played one of the championship's greatest ever games in Dublin last year, was an error. And I'm not sure it wasn't quite gripping enough for a neutral, and it wasn't quite insightful enough for a rugby fan. It was sort of a bit of a grey area. It was sort of, robbing Peter to pay Paul almost. So if they tidied that up and focus more on the things that make rugby great, the characteristics that make rugby great, the camaraderie, the kinship, the team spirit, and all those things that are very difficult to show in a documentary, in fairness, they could be onto a winner. They focus on the individual too much, and I think that rugby is not a sport which lends itself particularly easily. The players are not at ease talking about themselves. Maybe they need to be better, but then the argument that I would put forward is that rugby does have many, sundry qualities and that are based around a collective, and if the documentary producers focused more on those qualities, then the individuality that they're craving would shine naturally. It wouldn't have to be artificially sort of projected and thrust to the viewer. Anyway, that's it. That's my rant's over.
I think that's very good. I think that's good as someone who's watched it. The only point I thought about as you were saying that was, I guess it's not necessarily. It feels like it's designed for like someone who watches the Six Nations and a World Cup, but not necessarily rugby week to week, or someone who doesn't watch rugby at all. If that makes sense, like it kind of feels like it's in that like middle ground where it'll hopefully entice more people in to watch it a bit more, and that's probably a good thing.
I think it's a fair question to ask, having watched it, as you've touched on that. Who is this documentary been made for? What is the target audience here? If it is 18 to 24-year-old Gen Z, where rugby is sort of falling behind, those who don't know rugby that well, I'm not sure it's good enough to attract them. But is it good enough for the casual rugby fan? Yes. Is it good enough for the real committed fan, the proper loyalist? Not sure.
To bring you back crudely to NFL again, I think as a sort of
can't stop it.
Who came into that sport as a newbie and was sort of was introduced through a lot of these all access documentaries. I think the access point is so important, because that's where stars come from organically, I feel, and the point Charles makes there about having the stars projected onto you, I think can be a bit stifling. That's all I'd say.
Yeah, you almost, if you're going to do it, you have to really open the doors, and also maybe for the second season just do some background checks to see if any of your players are going to go to the NFL by the time the series comes out. Might be
Well, that big, but the
Might be an idea.
serious point there is that big lag time. That's a
Yeah.
year is such a long time, and we've got more documentaries coming out, haven't we? We've got there's one on the World Cup referees. That's going to be more intriguing for how recent the subject matter is, and then we've got one on a little bit further down the line on Australia's World Cup coming out, I think at the end of February.
Looks fun.
Looks really fun, and it's fresh in our minds, the World Cup. Fresher in our minds than last season's Six Nations.
We either said it on the pod or we said it at the time when they announced it was going to happen. We're like, that's quite a big gap between when it's being filmed and when it's being done. And I guess we're seeing that. Sorry, yeah, Charles, just finally.
I will quickly just go into bat. I agree with what you've both said, and the wait is too long. But I'll quickly go into bat for the producers here, because I don't think they could have released it during the World Cup. That would have been sort of completely self-defeating. So therefore, they've delayed it to tee up this year's tournament, this year's championship, sort of to tee up 2024 Six Nations and get people talking about the championship before the next edition starts on Friday in Marseille. That is, I think that's the thought process behind the timing, and I don't think it's too flawed. I think they had their hands tied slightly.
So feasibly, there could be a second series by the autumn. I don't know.
Yes,
I'm just
feasibly,
speculating. Okay.